Welcome, everyone, to a Friday edition of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, Justin Miller. Thank you for joining us and getting your weekend started with us here at the Media Row podcast. A huge thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper for their support of the show. They've been here since day one, and we want you guys to go support them as well over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. You're going to find, first and foremost, wonderful people in that building, as well as great food and great drinks, and also some really good deals. Use that keyword that you hear on this show all the time in Woodley, and your first drink is on the house, courtesy of us at Media Row and also the wonderful people at Kelly's Little Nipper. Also, before we dive into today's show, want to make sure you guys have subscribed, liked, commented, rated wherever you are viewing or listening to this show. We greatly appreciate your support. And then make sure you are following along wherever you like to social media. At Media Row Pod is where you can catch clips from the show as well as post-game interviews with coaches and players. So a very busy Friday. These are kind of my favorite types of shows where we are just recapping and previewing games. I mean, we had Fridays during football season where we were just stacked, previewing college football games. It's starting to get to that time of the year with college basketball because we have some great games happening in the state. Of course, we're going to preview both Drake games as the Drake men and women tip off at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Men play at the Knapp Center against North Dakota State, and the women play on the road against St. Thomas. We also will be recapping the CYHAWK battles, where you had the women play on Wednesday and you have the men who played on Thursday, and what were some really fun games to watch. So we'll give our takes on those games as well. But to jump into it, starting with the game we will be covering live, and that is the Drake men taking on North Dakota State, 1 o'clock tip at the Knapp Center. You have the Bulldogs 6-4 taking on the 7-3 Bison in what is their final non-conference game of the season, and yet again another very challenging non-con opponent where North Dakota State is 7-3. They beat Northern Arizona, who Drake also beat, but they also have Valley experience. They beat Southern Illinois earlier this year as well. So for Drake, a team that the non-conference season has been full of highs and lows, inconsistencies, and you're starting to see those inconsistencies balance out. But one more victory, finish up the non-con with a victory, just to build up that momentum, build up that confidence before you head into what is a very challenging and tough Missouri Valley. Have you guys looked at the standings? So you have UNI, a team that Jacobson brings back a lot of experience, some great veterans, and the team plays like it. They're connected right out of the gate, but they're not unbeatable. They lost last week to a really bad Wichita State team in overtime. Then they also lost to Tulsa. So they're really good, very talented team. Not taking anything away from Jacobson, but a team that is beatable, like a lot of these Valley teams are, even the great ones. You have Belmont, who's always challenging and always up there in one of the top dog spots in the Valley. Last year, they took Drake to the semifinals. They battled Drake in the semifinals down in St. Louis, where they are an offensive juggernaut in this conference, and they continue to be a very talented squad. You also have Illinois State, a team that I picked to actually win the conference, a team that is full of experience, and it doesn't hurt. They have the best big man in the conference leading that squad. You have Murray State, the team Drake will be tipping off conference play against next week on the road. That is just full of size and led by a great first-year head coach. You even have Bradley, a team that has struggled and disappointed, I think, out of a lot of people's eyes to start the year, but it's Brian Wardle, and he is a fantastic coach. I know some Drake fans may be scoffing at that, but game respect game. Brian Wardle is a fantastic coach and has proven that no matter how inexperienced his squad is, how young it is, he is going to make them a contender. And I still fully believe that, despite maybe the slow start from the Braves. So while I know this game against North Dakota State, it's not going to be, if Drake wins, all of a sudden they jump up in the KenPom rankings and, oh man, look out for the Bulldogs. I'm realistic about that. But just in that mental state, for the coaching staff, for the roster, and honestly for the fans, because last week was just another really tough loss to swallow for the Drake Bulldogs, where, man, you're seeing improvements. You are seeing this offense start to click. You're starting to see that defensive intensity that Coach Henderson has wanted from the squad. You're starting to see the inconsistencies balance out with this team. And you love seeing Owen Larson finally suit up after being injured. So you're seeing stuff that you should be confident about, but the wins just haven't been following. And that's another game at home that Drake loses. Last week against UAB, another one possession game for the most part. They lose by 5 towards the end. And fans are just left with, man, we don't want to just say, man, we were close. You want to say you won those games. And you know Coach Henderson and the players won it more than anyone else in that building. So a win Saturday would just be huge, in my opinion, for that confidence and that momentum for the coaching staff, the roster, the fans, when you're getting ready to go into what will be an exciting and challenging conference season. And now, like I said, does a win against North Dakota State change the outcome of the season? No, you're still the Drake Bulldogs in the Missouri Valley Conference, a one-bid league where the must-win games are in March in St. Louis. This team has shown great improvement, and now you're just wanting to see those wins follow the improvement. But for those wins to follow for the Drake Bulldogs, they're going to need to clean up the errors that have kept them from that win column, and those struggles with the rebounding game and struggles with early deficits. And that is going to be the biggest 2 keys that I'm looking for on Saturday against North Dakota State. And North Dakota State is a very challenging team for the Drake Bulldogs. I mean, looking at on paper, again, very similar to what we saw with UAB, where it just seems like anything Drake is struggling at, you look on paper and it seems like North Dakota State's the best at it. Where North Dakota State, top 2 in offense and defense in the Summit League. They're also top 3 in rebounding. And that was the first number I was looking at, because the rebounding numbers were eye-popping for the Drake Bulldogs against UAB, where they couldn't clean the glass. Second chance opportunities for UAB. And that has just been a commonality with this team. And you've seen flashes of where they go on stretches where you look down at that box score and they're out rebounding their opponent by 15. But those are few and far in between. And that has been a real struggle for this team. And this is a team that has a lot of size that you're just waiting to see where it clicks, where it just seems to fall their way. And this is going to be a good team to challenge them with their rebounding abilities to get them prepared for the size they will face next week against Murray State. But a very interesting game. This is also interesting just because of the experience Coach Henderson has against this opponent. Of course, Coach Henderson, first year here at Drake, but spent the previous 6 years at South Dakota State as a head coach, of course, part of the Summit League, and a 500 record with the Bison. Out of the 12 games he has faced against North Dakota State, he has a 6-6 record. This is a team that has proven to be challenging for Coach Henderson, and I think he would love nothing more than to make it a 7-6 record and build on that momentum. Because again, I know it seems like I'm, keep mentioning that Drake needs this win. I don't think it's much of a need. It's more just you finally get into that win column after I think a lot of people are seeing growth. And you want to see these players and these coaches rewarded for that growth that you're seeing early on in the season. So going to be a fun one. I really expect this to have the similar feeling of the UAB game last week, which if only Drake could have won that game, that would have been just an amazing all-around game. But it was a great atmosphere. I expect fans to show up and have that same fire and the rowdiness that they had last Friday. And then, I expect this Drake team to play with that physicality that they had last week as well. So should be a fun one. We will be there covering it. 1:00 tip-off between the Drake Bulldogs and North Dakota State. Sticking with the Bulldogs, we'll move now to the women's side of things as the Drake women hit the road to face St. Thomas. Very tough start for the Drake Bulldogs because you have Coach Pullman, who has just consistently been a winner. You've had this Drake women's team consistently being a winner where they're always a top dog. And right now, they've gone over a month without a victory. And we mentioned earlier, it was either this week or last week, one of those shows, we mentioned how the Drake women have gone on stretches where they've lost 5+ games before. Their non-con is always difficult, but we haven't seen a stretch like this. 1-7 going into this weekend. And they're going up against a St. Thomas team that has won 4 in a row. They finally broke out of that tough start where they were 1-6 to start the year. And so it is going to be an exciting game. And it very similar to the men. The biggest key for the women is getting out of those early deficits. Again, last week, it was a tough outing for the Drake Bulldogs, and they just put themselves in these holes, and the turnovers then pile up, and then the rebounding struggles, and you're just seeing those consistencies with the women as well. But I trust Coach Pullman. I mentioned this plenty of times, where the best thing about this Drake women's team is their in-game adjustments, and that falls on coaching. And if Coach Pullman can make great adjustments with a 15-minute halftime locker room speech or whatever magic she works to kick this Drake women's team into high gear by the time they start the third quarter, then yes, I'm going to put my trust into her and her coaching staff and her players when they have months to improve. And you're starting to see one of the few changes she has made these last few games in Coach Pullman is changing up the starting lineups. And, I've had some people ask me the question of why is Grace Knutson out of the starting lineup? And she comes off the bench despite being one of the team's leading scorers. So people ask me, why would she do that? And I don't know personally. Like it's a question I plan to ask Coach Pullman the next time I see her. But in my view, I see it as one of the struggles Drake has had earlier in the year is getting some of that bench production. So when you're struggling with a little bit of a depth issue, it is nice to have a player like Grace Knutson that has that starter ability and has really shown great improvement on the offensive end of the ball, where you can have her come off the bench, and when players like Abby Alsma need a two-minute break because Abby Alsma isn't out for long, you have full confidence that you have a scorer out there on the court. So that's my answer to that one. I do like Vice being the starting center for the Drake Bulldogs. I think Taylor has shown really good improvement, really since that Iowa State game where she had to go up against Audie Crooks and played her best game in a Drake uniform that I've seen. She has taken it to a different level. She has built up stronger hands. She has better footwork than a year ago. You're seeing those improvements you want to see. But Vice Quinn just has this different level of confidence. And sometimes it may hurt her. Sometimes she takes a 3 or 2 where you're like, there's plenty of time on the shot clock before you need to hoist that. But I love seeing it. I love seeing players get the ball, and if they're open, they're ready to shoot it because that fits Pullman's style. Pullman, for years, her offense has been, let's get the ball and run. Let's make the defense play on their back of their heels. That has been her mindset and her goals for her offenses. And I think Vice Quinn really fits that and can stretch the floor a little better, in my opinion, than Taylor, just with that confidence of that 3 ball, because that is going to force defenses to step out, and that opens up the lane for Abby Alsma, for Ava Hawthorne, for these guards to really do what they do best, and that's get to the hoop. So you're seeing Pullman, you're seeing the staff try to make changes to just see what is going to be that one piece they move that clicks everything together. So going to be a really fun game on Saturday. You have St. Thomas, a top 2 team in the Summit League, in defense, a top 3 team in 3-point percentage. So expect this game to be an absolute brawl like we saw last week or last time out for the Drake women. Should be a lot of fun. Again, I know you look at the record and you see the 1-7 start for the Drake women. This is an easy team, first and foremost, to cheer for. Easy team to turn on and get excited about because of that style of play that Pullman has implemented. But also, I still have full faith in Pullman and this staff that, maybe they don't win the Missouri Valley title this year. Maybe they take a step back, but they're still going to challenge teams. Even in these last 2 losses, they've put together some really challenging moments for their opponents. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Drake tips off against St. Thomas, the women, at 1:00 on the road. We will try to do our best. This is the first time it's happened this season where both games are on at the exact same time. I'm a one-man operation. I'm going to be live at the Knapp Center. I'm going to try my best to balance them out and get you guys up to date all over social media with both of those games. So now that we got our previews out of the way for the weekend, let's jump into the recaps. Starting with the women's game. You had the biggest game in women's basketball this week in the nation. I said it on The Rush with Travis and Ross earlier this week, and then I was seeing that idea being complimented all throughout Twitter because you have people way smarter than me on ESPN, Fox Sports, all saying the same things of just how big that CYHAWK game was. You had number 10 versus number 11. My apologies. I think earlier in the week I said number 12 for Iowa. 10 versus 11, and it lives up to the hype. Iowa State wins 74-69. And first half, punch after punch by both juggernauts, by both great coaches, future Hall of Fame coaches, in my opinion. You have star players stepping up. You have players like Chit Chat who are shooting the roof off of Hilton. And it's a heavyweight battle, what we expected. Then that third quarter hits, and you have Iowa State go up by, I think it was 17. Just absolutely dominate, control impose their will, use whatever cliche you want to use. They did it against Iowa in that third quarter. They go up by double digits. I'm sitting back going, oh, is this game about to get ugly? No way. No way that this can't end up like this. These are two very talented teams. This can't end with a Cyclone blowout. And luckily it didn't. As a fan of women's basketball, as a fan of just basketball, you want to see those battles. And Iowa comes out in that fourth quarter and goes blow for blow with the Cyclones, but the X factor, the person we talk about every time we bring up Iowa State, Audie Crooks delivers. Audie Crooks delivers in crunch time with her third straight 30-point performance. She scores 30 in 36 minutes. Just an unbelievable night where she did what we expected her to do, where she gets the defense in foul trouble. You had Hayden foul out. You had Stolke with 4 fouls with still like 7 minutes to go in that fourth quarter, where they could just deliver the ball inside the paint to Crooks. And all you can do if you're Stolke, put those hands up and just kind of pray for the best. So they took advantage of that. So you had Crooks, of course, deliver. And then you had, to Audie Crooks' Batman, you had her Robin and Addie Brown, who puts up her 4th straight double-double, 20 points, 12 rebounds. Another player that if Crooks is on the bench or if she ever gets in foul trouble, yeah, as a Cyclone fan, you're probably are feeling a little uneasy. But as long as Brown's out there, you still have full confidence that that offense has a legit scorer and someone, more importantly, that can create their own shot. Just like how Crooks, if she's in her spot, it's kind of, she can do what she wants to do. She can hit that fadeaway that she's improved upon. She's grown in that mid-range game. She's a strong passer, but she can really get to the rim. Addie Brown, on the other hand, she has that versatility of she can drive to the hoop. She can pass. She has a great 3-ball. She has that mid-range shot. She can create. So you have confidence as a Cyclone fan, no matter who's on the floor. As long as Addie Brown is out there, you have confidence, and she delivers. But another reason Iowa State wins is because of kind of that third and forgotten player. Someone that has, in my opinion, been the glue to the talent and the firepower that Brown and Crooks have. And that's the transfer in Jada Williams, the guard that came from Arizona, kind of overlooked in conversations. We didn't mention her on Wednesday when we talked about the game. And when you listen to the national news and you watch on Twitter what people are talking about, they rarely mention Jada Williams. And I seriously believe Fenley hit that one out of the park in the transfer portal. And while Iowa State has had great guard play for years, Jada Williams has just really fit in like a perfect puzzle piece to the style of play that Bill Fenley wants out of his Cyclone offense going through Crooks and Brown. Because she goes out there and puts together a great performance with 11 points, 12 assists, 7th game of the season where she's had 8+ assists. Just her style, her attitude fits the Cyclone team like she was recruited from day one out of Ames. So I was really impressed with Jada Williams, and it just helps when you have that quarterback player in that point guard position, as in Jada Williams, who brings that attitude, distributes the ball without turning it over. So if, with the attention that Brown and Crooks bring from defenses, demand from defenses, she can get to the hoop and take it upon herself to lead the offense as well. Among other great players. I mean, long story long, I'm not concerned about Iowa. That's a tough game. The way they struggled from hitting the three ball out of halftime, the way both teams really struggled at the free throw line, one of the worst free throw performances I've seen by either team, I think, ever. But despite all that going up against them, Iowa still put together a fantastic fourth quarter and had opportunities to tie or even take the lead deep in the game. So I'm not concerned about Iowa whatsoever. I will say Bill Fenley has himself a squad. Iowa State is legit. And I'm excited to just see how far this team's able to go. I mean, I think this team had Sweet 16 expectations going into the year. I mean, if you're a Cyclone fan, are you starting to talk about possibly 2 Elite Eight? Maybe, if you're very lucky, 2 Final Four teams? Maybe. I know it's December. I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. But just both Cyclone squads really impressed me. And the women for Iowa State in that 74-69 victory over Iowa didn't hold back. And really excited to just see where Bill Fenley is able to take the squad. I want to move on to the men's side of things now with a game. It was funny. You had the women, honestly, they lived up to the hype. They lived up to the expectations. The men, on the other hand, they kind of surpassed expectations. You had a back and forth battle. It was very reminiscent of 2015, where we talked with John Walters on Wednesday's show. And if you haven't catched or listened to that interview, make sure after today's show to go back and listen to John Walters. Great stuff, even though the game has passed. But we asked John about that 2015 game at Hilton, the last time Iowa State was a top 4 team and Iowa was unranked. They were mirror images of each other. You had Iowa in both games come out and look absolutely dominant, control the game, and make Iowa State look uncomfortable. And they had a huge second half push by Iowa State. It gets down to the wire, arm length, whole way in that second half from both teams, just punch after punch. And it definitely surpassed a lot of people's expectations. You had on Wednesday's show, when I was on with Travis and Ross on The Rush, you had a listener call in, and he mentioned how he thought Iowa was going to lose by 30. And I kind of pushed back. I said, I know they lost by 19 at Michigan State the last time they played a top 10 team on the road. But man, maybe it's just a little bit of the Bulldog colors coming out of me, because watching Ben McCollum all of last year and Bennett Sturts and a lot of those guys that transferred to Iowa, you saw glimpses of what that system can do to some really talented teams and teams that are better than the ones Ben McCollum has. And he is able, when that system works to perfection, when they get great ball movement, where they get multiple scorers, great bench play, and more importantly, just defensively force that team to slow so far down that they just can't run a single offensive set, then they're in business. And that's what Iowa did in the first half. And to be honest, Iowa fans, that's a game you look at and you gain so much more confidence. And it's crazy to say, because I know there's no such thing as moral victories in sports, but that's about as close as you can get if you're a Hawkeye fan. Because this team, the way they bounce back, they lost by 19 on the road at Michigan State the last time they played a top 10 team. And this time they go out, they not only keep it arm's length the entire way with Bennett Sturts struggling. He only had 10 points on 3 of 11 shooting. But they led at halftime, and they controlled that first half. They made Iowa State look so uncomfortable. But Iowa State just once again proves why they're a top 4 team and a true title contender. They have so much experience on that team where they can be down at halftime and they don't get panicked. They came out, they outscored Iowa 41-29 in the second half, and that offense can just beat you in so many different levels. Where Iowa, on the other hand, if Sturts goes cold, if that 3-ball goes cold, they're kind of done. Iowa State, they can get it inside Buchanan or Jefferson. Jefferson can also stretch the floor and hit a couple of threes, as we saw. Taman Lipsey, same deal. Great floor general, can drive to the hoop like no one else can. And then you have Torre, a true freshman that's unbelievable defensively and in the half-court set and can get the team off to fast breaks. And then Momcilovic. Where can't this guy score? Inside, outside, fadeaway jumpers from 20 feet out. This team proved again last night why they are a true title contender, and it's because that defensive physicality and the offensive levels that they can attack defenses from. If I'm a Hawkeye fan, that is as close as a moral victory as you can get. You leave feelings. Your confidence is jump-started because that Michigan State loss stung. You kind of panicked a little. You sweated a little, being like, man, is this a reality check? And no, it's not. I think this is more the Iowa team we expect to see from McCollum going forward. Compete. They're going to have their moments. Michigan State's a damn good team. Tom Izzo is a fantastic coach. That was Ben McCollum's very first true road game against a Big Ten opponent, a top 10 team. Gonna give him some grace. This is still an Iowa Hawkeye team that can easily make it to the NCAA tournament and win a game in the NCAA tournament. But an absolute blast of a game. The final whistle blew and, the players are in the handshake line and I'm watching on TV and I'm just sitting there talking to myself being like, I love college basketball and I love that rivalry. And I believe that's the first time in Iowa State history they've won the CYHAWK in women's basketball, men's basketball, football, and wrestling all in the same year. So congratulations to Iowa State fans. Iowa fans, still nothing to overthink about this one. You still have a very good team. And it was a game, too, that as I'm wearing the Bulldog pride on my chest right now, man, I miss those guys. Sturts is so good. Tavion Banks is great. I love Isaiah Howard. Cam Manyow has impressed me. And they're going to be just fine. So an absolute blast, though. A fun week of shows. We will be live, of course, in the Knapp Center tomorrow, 1 o'clock, as the Drake men tip off in their final non-con against North Dakota State. So be sure to be following at Media Row Pod on Twitter for all the action on that game. And then, of course, we will be back on Monday for a brand new week of shows as Valley play begins. So we will be locked in on the Missouri Valley and the Drake Bulldogs. So be sure to tune in each and every day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Media Row Podcast.